The Outer Worlds arrived in 2019 as a breath of fresh, satirical air in the RPG space. It was a spiritual successor to classics like Fallout New Vegas, and it delivered a tight, witty adventure through the corporate-controlled Halcyon system. Expectations for its sequel, The Outer Worlds 2, were sky high. Released in 2024, the game trades Halcyon for the brand-new Arcadia Galaxy, promising a bigger, bolder, and more complex experience. While it succeeds in many areas, particularly its refined combat and deep character building, it also stumbles, creating a sprawling adventure that sometimes feels at odds with itself. This is a game that reaches for the stars but occasionally gets lost in the void. Our journey begins with the player taking on the role of a ship captain for the Earth Directorate. You are sent to Arcadia on a critical mission: acquire advanced technology from the secretive and autocratic Protectorate. Of course, this being an Outer Worlds game, things go catastrophically wrong almost immediately. Your botched mission rips holes in space-time, unleashing chaotic rifts that threaten to consume the entire galaxy. This opening act sets up a sprawling 65-hour narrative that, while technically a sequel, stands firmly on its own. You don't need to have played the first game to understand the stakes, as the focus is squarely on the new dangers plaguing Arcadia. The game maintains the series' signature anti-corporate satire, but the tone feels noticeably different this time. The humor is still present in the quippy dialogue and absurd situations, but the overarching story takes a more serious, grounded turn. The narrative delves deeper into political ideologies, exploring the consequences of unchecked capitalism, autocratic rule, and even misguided utilitarianism. This shift is evident in the initial 20 hours, which play out as a slow-burn revenge quest against the forces that wronged you. While this start can feel sluggish, it lays the groundwork for a much more complex and morally ambiguous conflict that defines the latter half of the game. The central conflict revolves around the space-time rifts and the factions vying for control of Arcadia. Your main quest is to find a way to stop the rifts, a task that forces you to navigate the treacherous political landscape of the galaxy. The writing shines when it presents you with difficult choices that have no clear good outcome, echoing the moral complexity that made Fallout New Vegas so memorable. However, the narrative is not without its flaws. Some critics have pointed out that the writing can be sloppy, with the humor feeling patchy and the main plot existing merely to shuffle the player from one firefight to the next without building real emotional stakes. At the heart of Arcadia's conflict are three distinct and well-realized factions, each representing a different extreme of societal control. First among them is Auntie's Choice, a monstrous hyper-capitalist entity born from the merger of Auntie Cleo and Spacer's Choice. This corporation markets itself with slogans of freedom and personal choice, but in reality it operates as an oppressive monopoly that controls every aspect of its citizens' lives. Their philosophy is that everything, including human life, has a price. Working with them means engaging in corporate espionage, hostile takeovers, and morally bankrupt marketing campaigns, all while listening to their relentlessly cheerful and manipulative jingles. On the opposite end of the ideological spectrum is the Order of the Ascendant. This faction is a society of scientists and mathematicians who believe they can predict the future using complex algorithms, a clear nod to Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. Their goal is to guide humanity toward a statistically probable golden age. However, their methods are ruthless and detached. To prevent a negative outcome they have predicted, they will not hesitate to commit atrocities, justifying mass murder or societal collapse as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. Their quests often involve manipulating data and people to ensure their predictions come to pass, forcing players to question if the ends truly justify the means. Finally, there is the Protectorate, the game's primary antagonist. This faction is an openly fascistic, autocratic monarchy that rules with an iron fist. They believe that individual will is a flaw and that true peace can only be achieved through absolute conformity. To enforce this, they use a form of brainwashing they call mental refreshment to erase dissent and ensure total loyalty to the state. The Protectorate is less morally grey and more overtly evil than the other factions, serving as a clear villain for much of the game. Their imposing stormtrooper-like soldiers and brutalist architecture make them a constant and intimidating presence throughout Arcadia. The interplay between these three factions forms the core of the game's narrative. You will be forced to align with, betray, and manipulate each of them to achieve your goals. Unfortunately, while the faction storylines are compelling on their own, some reviews note that all paths ultimately converge on a single, somewhat underwhelming confrontation and final boss fight. This can make your choices feel less impactful in the grand scheme of things as the narrative funnels everyone toward the same conclusion. Despite this, the journey through each faction's unique brand of dystopia is filled with memorable characters and sharp political commentary that makes it a highlight of the experience. When it comes to gameplay, The Outer Worlds 2 is a significant step up from its predecessor. The combat in particular feels much improved. Gunplay is snappier, and new mobility options like a double jump and a slide make firefights more dynamic and engaging. The arsenal has also been expanded with more creative weapons, including the Spectrum Dance Saber, a melee weapon that requires rhythm-based inputs to maximize its damage. Weapons and armor are highly customizable with a deep modding system, allowing you to tailor your gear to your specific playstyle. While it still doesn't quite match the polish of a top-tier first-person shooter, the combat is consistently fun and satisfying. Character progression, however, is a more mixed bag. The level cap is set at 30, and you receive 2 skill points per level to invest across 12 different skills. A major point of contention is the lack of a respec option, meaning every skill point you spend is a permanent choice. This decision penalizes players who want to experiment with a generalist build and forces a high degree of specialization early on. The perk system, which requires investing in prerequisite skills, also feels limiting, as you can only select 15 perks in a single playthrough. The returning floors system adds an interesting wrinkle, offering you a perk point in exchange for a permanent debuff based on your in-game actions. The balance between skills is another area where the game struggles. Skills like speech can be incredibly powerful, allowing you to bypass entire combat encounters and major quest sections with a single dialogue check. In contrast, skills like lockpicking often yield minimal rewards, making them feel like a wasted investment. This imbalance can make certain character builds feel vastly more effective than others. Furthermore, core RPG systems like the in-game economy and faction reputation feel underdeveloped. Earning bits or increasing your standing with a faction rarely seems to have a meaningful impact on the world or your gameplay options, which is a missed opportunity. Exploration in the vast Arcadia galaxy also comes with its own set of pros and cons. The game features 4 main destinations, including the snowy, monastery-like planet of Cloister and the lush jungle world of Eden. These environments are visually impressive, but they suffer from a critical lack of enemy variety. Most planets only feature 2 or 3 types of wildlife, and you will find yourself fighting the same raptidons over and over again. Another strange design choice is that enemies do not respawn. Once you clear an area, it remains empty forever, which can make the worlds feel lifeless and barren after your initial pass, reducing the incentive for exploration. Companions have always been a cornerstone of Obsidian RPGs, and The Outer Worlds 2 continues this tradition with a cast of 6 new crewmates. Each companion represents one of the major factions, offering unique insights into the political turmoil of Arcadia. For example, Tristan is an authoritarian cop from the Protectorate, while Inez is a pro-capitalist medic aligned with Auntie's choice. Their conflicting ideologies lead to some fantastic banter and commentary aboard your ship. However, while they serve their purpose in fleshing out the world, many players may find them less charismatic and memorable than the beloved crew of the Unreliable from the first game. The absence of romance options is also a notable omission. From a technical standpoint, the game is a bit of a mess at launch. Reports vary, but many players have encountered a host of bugs, ranging from broken dialogue and quests that won't progress to combat AI that simply stands idle. On a PlayStation 5 Pro, the game generally runs smoothly, but is hampered by frequent loading screens between areas and some minor audio glitches. The soundtrack, while serviceable, is largely forgettable and fails to leave a lasting impression. This lack of polish gives the game a Game Pass-ified feel. It's polished enough to be enjoyable, but lacks the depth and stability you'd expect from a full-priced AUD $110 title. So, who is The Outer Worlds 2 for? If you are a fan of Fallout, New Vegas and the original game, and you value complex moral choices, deep build crafting, and sharp political satire, you will find a lot to love here. The refined combat and intricate faction storylines offer a compelling reason to dive into Arcadia. The game is a strong step closer to being a true spiritual successor to New Vegas. And for many, that will be more than enough. It is a sprawling, ambitious RPG that, despite its flaws, delivers a memorable adventure through a fascinating new corner of the galaxy. However, players looking for a highly polished, bug-free experience or a story with a powerful, cohesive narrative arc might be disappointed. The undercooked RPG systems, empty-feeling worlds, and narrative that sometimes prioritizes generating tasks over building stakes can be frustrating. The game feels like a sprawling failure of focus at times, and some have even called it Obsidian's worst game. Ultimately, The Outer Worlds 2 is a game of highs and lows. It is a better value on a subscription service like Game Pass. But for those willing to look past its rough edges, there is a brilliant RPG core waiting to be discovered.